Good morning and welcome to this next message in the series Conversations on the Cross, as we look at the conversations that Jesus had while he was being crucified in our approach to Easter. The Gospels record that Jesus made 7 statements while he was on the cross, and we're going to look at each one of these over the next 7 weeks. And today we're on instalment number 4, and it's fitting that today on Mother's Day we look at the conversation that Jesus had with his mum, Mary. Happy Mother's Day to all you mums. I hope you're being blessed today. I hope you're enjoying treats and gifts and knowing and experiencing love from your family. You know, mums are important and do a great job in family life, and we're celebrating the mums today. I hope you have a great day. So Jesus had a conversation with his mother, Mary, right at the end of his life, as he was hanging on the cross. It's important to note as we look at these conversations that we consider the fact that the last words that people speak are important. The last words that people speak leave a legacy, leave a thought, or emphasize something. Usually they're passing on messages or making statements to those close to them before their life ends. And it's true for Jesus here that he's leaving some statements, making some statements which leave a lasting impression for us. Jesus would have been speaking these words in great pain. I've explained previously that as the position that Jesus was fixed to the cross on would have made it very difficult for him to breathe. In order to get air into his lungs, he would have had to push up on his feet, to extend and to lift up, to enable him to get air into his lungs. That would have caused him great physical pain. And so Jesus would have gone through that pain in order to say something of meaning and value for us. It was something that needed to be said, and Jesus was willing to go through that physical pain in order to get these words out of his mouth. So we should sit up and take notice of these sentences, I believe. And the sentence I'd like to look at today is found in John chapter 19, where Jesus speaks with his mother. And it says this in verse 25 and verse 26 and verse 27. It says, "Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, 'Dear woman, here is your son.' And to the disciple, 'Here is your mother.' From that time on, the disciple took her into his home." A really interesting conversation here. And Jesus shows in there some great love that he has for his mother. And there's some great lessons for us as we look at Mother's Day, to see how Jesus loved his mum, and to use that as an inspiration to help us in the love that we show in our families, to our mothers and our family members. There's some great inspiration there for us. The first one, I've just got a few observations where I see that can help us with our family life today. You know, families are really important. Families are the bedrock of society. Family life really matters. Family is an institution created by God, along with the government and along with the church. The family form one of those bedrocks, one of those foundation stones of society. Your family matters to God. Your family situation matters to God. And there are some observations here how Jesus treated his mum, his family member, that I believe can help us today. I see 3 observations about family life. The first one is that Jesus showed love for his mum. Jesus showed great love for his mum. You know, Jesus wasn't the only one who was in pain that day. As Jesus was being crucified, murdered, executed in the most horrific way, Jesus' mother Mary was there every step of the way with him. You know, mums are there for us every step, aren't they? They're there when our life begins, and Mary was with Jesus as his life ended. There was a prophecy that was given about Mary that was spoken over her by a man named Simeon when Jesus was just a few days old, barely a week old. And Simeon talked about Jesus and said that he would cause the rising and the falling of many in Israel, and that he would reveal what's in people's hearts. And then in delivering this prophecy, he turned to Mary and said, "And a sword will pierce your heart also." You know, mothers carry great pressures and can carry great pain too. And Mary here was carrying great pain as that prophecy from Simeon was being fulfilled. We see the pain that Mary was suffering. Mary was at the foot of the cross witnessing a horrific scene that involved her firstborn, her son. And Jesus demonstrates great love for his mother in that moment. He calls her dear woman. He speaks words of love to her. Now, it could be easily misunderstood that to say woman is not a sign of affection or endearment, but actually the contrary is true. When Jesus says dear woman, he's using the language of the day where he demonstrates respect and love. He's hanging there in great pain, but he's not thinking of himself in this moment. He's thinking of the pain that his mum is going through. Jesus shows us that it's important to love our family. Jesus loved his mum in this moment, and we should love our families too. There's a famous passage, isn't there, about love and what defines love. How do you sum up love? And it's in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's often read at weddings. The context is about how a church interacts with each other, with spiritual gifts and the operation of them. But the definition of love there can carry across to all situations. And it says this in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 to verse 8. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. A great definition for love that helps us love our families today. It's not always easy. You know, you may look at other families and think they're the perfect family. You may look at your family situation and think it's not perfect. It's far from perfect. My family life is a mess. But with God's help, we can love our families. You know, Jesus didn't always have it easy with his family either. It may surprise you to learn that Jesus faced opposition from his family. They doubted, they didn't believe him when he made claims about who he was, and when he set out in his ministry, he faced opposition from them. It says in Mark chapter 3 that Jesus went into a house one day and there was a crowd that was gathered and that his disciples weren't able to eat, and his family went to take charge of him and said he is out of his mind. And it says that his family went to take charge of him. Perhaps Mary was involved in that moment as well. This wasn't just Jesus' siblings, a bit of brotherly rivalry, a bit of unbelief and friction with the siblings, but maybe the wider family was involved here too. In other situations and other circumstances, we see that and read that Jesus' brothers didn't believe what Jesus said. Jesus didn't always have it easy with his family, but he continued to love them. And he demonstrates love for his mother while he's on the cross in this moment. It's not easy to love our families. Sometimes it's hard, but the Bible instructs us. The 10 Commandments say, honour your father and your mother. That is a clear instruction from God in his word. And as we put that into practice, even though it's not always easy and challenging and hard, and if we use 1 Corinthians 13 as a guideline to help us love, with God's help and with his grace, we can love our families. And there is great blessing in it. Remembering that the family is one of God's institutions that he's created to help us as his children, as humanity, to understand what it means to love and be loved, to understand the challenges and the trials that come with life, to have a family unit to share those with. Jesus loved his family. The second observation I see in this passage, where Jesus is talking to his mum, is that he takes responsibility for his mum. He takes responsibility for his mum. And Jesus was the firstborn for Mary. And as you read through the Gospels, you'll see that Joseph, Jesus' dad, he disappears from the recordings of the Gospel. And scholars believe that at some point along the way, Joseph probably died. And so Mary was left with the children, looking after them on her own, doing the best that she could. And Jesus, as the firstborn, would have assumed some responsibility for taking care of his mother. That responsibility would have fallen to him as the firstborn under Jewish law. And so here, as Jesus' life is ending, and he says, "Dear woman, here is your son." And he says to John, the disciple who he loved so much, he says, "Here is your mother." He's taking responsibility for his future mother's welfare and needs. He's aware that his life is about to end, and he's fulfilling this part of the Jewish law and demonstrating responsibility for his mother's welfare. Without Joseph and without Jesus, Mary's future would have been perhaps uncertain, financially insecure, emotionally, she would have been in grief and great difficulty. Mary's future, she was uncertain, she would be vulnerable. But Jesus makes provision for her, and John steps up to the plate and takes her into his home from this point on to care for her, to provide for her, to give her a roof over her head, to make sure that she is loved and provided for. And Jesus instigates this in this dying breath that he has. And it tells us and communicates to us that as we seek to imitate Jesus with our lives, that we should take responsibility for our immediate family and the needs that they have. It's a biblical principle. And it shows it's a great opportunity for us to demonstrate God's love, to demonstrate God's love in action by caring for the needs of our immediate family, whatever they may be. It may be in a situation of old age and the needs that come as we advance in years. It may be that we have children in our lives who have additional needs. Showing great love for them is a great way of demonstrating, of putting God's love into action through our lives by caring for the needs of our immediate family. It may just be a case of simply enjoying our family life and enjoying our siblings and enjoying our parents and loving them day in, day out faithfully. We've got a responsibility as God's children to love our family members. Mary would have known great security in being cared for by John, Jesus' close disciple. And lastly, the third observation that I see, not only did Jesus demonstrate love to his mum, he communicated that in his words, he also took responsibility for her needs. But thirdly, Jesus, in providing for Mary in this way and in asking John to step up, he actually creates a new family unit, as it were. And we see here God's family coming together in being born at the foot of the cross. We see that people who aren't biologically linked coming together to become a unit, to become a family. As we put our trust in God and as we believe in him and as we place our trust in Jesus and his ability to save us from our sin, the Bible says that we are born and we are reborn and become children of God. That's in John chapter 1. As we put our trust in Jesus, we become children of God, supernaturally reborn, and we become part of God's family. God's family, the church, is born here at the foot of the cross, where John and Mary are united and care for each other after Jesus' death. And for each one of us, not only do we have a biological family, but we are born also into a greater family through our faith in Jesus. We are born into his church. We are born into the body of believers that make up Jesus' church. You may be lonely today. Your family life may not be what you want it to be, your biological family. It may be filled with pain. You may feel it's imperfect and incomplete. Well, I would encourage you today that there is no perfect family on earth. The only perfect family is God's family. And it says in Psalm 68 verse 5 that he is a father to those who are fatherless. He's a defender of the widow. And he sets the lonely in families. God brings us together. Our family experience on earth may be incomplete and it may be imperfect. But God brings us together as we place our trust in him, and he unites us into his family. The family that is born at the foot of the cross in this conversation where he brings Mary and John together. So we are being brought together with brothers and sisters from all backgrounds, from all tribes, from all nations. And our common thread and our common uniting purpose is our faith in Christ. And so this morning, be encouraged and take heart from the fact that as you trust God, you are not called to live in isolation or loneliness, but you are immediately become part of his family unit. So this morning on Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day to all the mums. And let's take some encouragement, let's take some lessons from how Jesus loved his mum. He showed love for her, he took responsibility for her, and also let's be filled with faith and encouragement that on Mother's Day, as we celebrate mums and the importance they are to our family life, let's celebrate again the fact that we are born into God's family as we place our trust in him through what he did on the cross for us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. See you again soon.